Hello, everyone. Yesterday, Donald Trump sat at the White House table with the titans of big tech. They gave him a microphone and, as expected, he spoke for 20 minutes of the hour. The first part is scripted, so you know what it's about. Then he begins to, let's just say he becomes characteristically unhinged. I'll read it aloud, very calmly. By 2035, energy demand is expected to more than triple. Under the Ratepayer Protection Pledge we're signing today, the big tech companies are making 5 important commitments to keep utility prices down for American consumers. First, these companies are committing to provide or pay for all power generation and electricity needed for their AI projects, which is massive. And where possible, they'll add capacity to the grid by building new power stations. So, they're going to be making their own electricity. They're not going to be taking for the grid, and they will actually, probably, based on what I'm seeing, they're building overcapacity, and they'll be able to sell that overcapacity at very low prices into the grid. In addition to that, we're fixing the grid now if we didn't do this. This was, I believe, I don't know, challenge, you want to challenge me. I think this was my idea. I said, wait a minute, we can't. When I first got involved with AI, they said, we will need triple the energy. Think of this, triple the energy of what we have now. Some people said double. I said, whether it's double or triple, that's crazy. And that was just for AI. It is incredible. And when you see the buildings we're talking about, you start to understand it. But unless you saw it, buildings that go for miles, buildings that are so big, buildings that cost $60 billion. I said, you mean $60 million? When I first got involved, they said, we're building a $60 billion building. I said, you mean 60 million? 60 million is a big building. It's not that big, but it's pretty big nowadays. They said, no, sir, we're going to spend 60 billion, but now it's like 100 billion and 150 billion. And the bottom line, it takes electricity like nobody's ever seen before. And I said, well, with an old grid, even if we fix it really well, which we're in the process of doing, you can't take that and double our electricity. They're going to have to build it themselves. And I told Mark. I actually told Mark. I told Elon. I told people. Nobody believed me. They said, you're going to let us build our own electric. Because they've been so used to being beaten down and to have people with no ideas how to solve problems, and then the whole thing fails. It's a whole disaster. They said, no, I'm serious. And in one case, they submitted plans, and they didn't do what I told them. And when I called them, I said, why don't you have your plant here? We thought you were kidding. Are you serious? You really? They couldn't believe it. In a good way. They said, it's too good to be true. And I said, no, it's not. And here's the other thing. You'll have your approvals within 2, 3, or 4 weeks. It used to take 20 years to get it prior to rejection. So, in other words, you go 20 years prior to rejection. They'd vote. I've known many plants where they've been, I knew people, they started off young. They were young trying to get approvals for a stupid plant. One plant. Their whole life was devoted to getting this plant. And around 22 years in one case, 22 years later he got rejected. I said that's not good. He wasted, let's say, half of his working life on getting an approval, and he didn't get. Now we get it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. When I came in originally in my first term, we had 2 big LG plants in Louisiana. They were in the 14th year of getting approvals, and they had just been rejected. And I got involved. They were tremendous plants. They're up now. They're working beautifully. They built the third one. They're magnificent. I mean, if you like pipes, this is a plant. The whole thing is you look inside. All it is pipes. I've never seen anything quite like it. It's like lying 2 or 3 Empire State Buildings on their side and doing nothing but putting pipes into it. So, I didn't know exactly what it represented. All I knew is this is what they needed. So, I got involved. The first one I got done in 1 day. The second one I was a little bit slower that week, and it took me 1 week. So I got the first one done in 1 day. Got fully approved. They were, and when they called up the head and I didn't want anything. I don't want anything for myself, I want for the country. When they called up the head of a company like a Microsoft, or like any one of the people in this room, but they called up the heads. They said, "No, we got rejected." "No, you just got approved." It was 1 day and 1 week, and they were built, and they're in your state, by the way, right? And they are big. Yes, they are. And they're doing great. Lots of pipes. And they're lots of pipes, right? That's all I noticed. I said I've never seen anything like anyway. I shall go and inspect my own pipes now. Until the next speech. Bye.